Okay, we're recording.
All right. Well, welcome to episode 3 of the Make Guitar podcast. This week we are going to talk about, um, I don't know, are we going to talk about China manufacturing, or do you want to talk about?
I don't know a lot about it. I just the things I've heard.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't talk about the subject. Is we'll just get into it, and we've got
Yeah,
some things that we've discussed.
yeah. What are you listening to?
Um, well, I have been listening to a lot of old music. I've been listening to Flock of Seagulls actually on YouTube. So um, uh, maybe it came up in my YouTube feed. I don't know why, but yeah, recently it came up in my feed. It was a reunion that happened a couple of years ago. Flock of Seagulls were playing with the Prague Philharmonic, and they did one of their old songs. Um, But yeah, I was really appreciating that guitarist's sound. He had a really unique tone and his use of delay. Like think about the intro. The first bit of I ran so far away, and that dan 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 dan. Yeah, that delay
Yeah,
was just a
I
big part of that sound.
yeah I think that sound, because U2 was around at that time, and I remember like U2 became this huge thing, right? And I remember talking with somebody back in high school, and I was like, "Oh, I think Flock of Seagulls is going to be like the biggest band ever." You know, right? And
They
they
should
had a
have
they have
been.
a similar sound to U2, actually, I think, right?
Hmm.
They're different, but they had that delay, right? But obviously they disappeared and U2 took over. I don't think I was ever like a big Flock of Seagulls fan, though I kind of dig that sound. Like that's kind of, it was a unique thing. I think like I didn't have I don't know, whatever it was, what would you call it, humility in high school. I was just into my hard rock thing. So like, if you weren't rocking
Hmm.
hard enough, it was like, whatever. Right. But yeah, I always actually liked them. They had a kind of a cool sound. Yeah, I bet the sound there was basically kind of a product of the time through the technology. So I think at that time, all of a sudden digital delays were a new thing. And so you could get delays that did some interesting or had more interesting features. And I'm sure that Paul Reynolds and The Edge were like kind of on it. Nowadays
Yeah,
everybody wants analog, right? But I think at that time digital was the new thing, and people thought they were great.
right. I actually would be. I would be curious if a lot of millennial aged musicians are less concerned with the analog effects and that kind of like throwback or vintage sound. Um, since well, I was having this conversation with someone recently about how so many bands that had kind of like a sonically progressive sound have like uh, maybe embraced noise at an early part in their career, morphed into more of a dream pop sound, um, which I think like Flock of Seagulls would be a pretty good influence if you were a dream pop band because they had that ethereal, like the keyboard sound and the that digital delay,
Yeah,
kind of good makings for a dream pop sound.
sure. Yeah, I bet they were a bigger influence than people would be willing to admit,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is sort of like there's a mild embarrassment, uh, and for fans of that band because they were, you think of them as kind of a one hit wonder because well, a lot of people aren't aware of
Yeah.
they had 3 albums of solid material before I think they they splintered a little bit and.
Did they do it? Am I thinking of somebody else? Maybe I'm thinking of Big Country, right? There's another band.
Right. Well, Big Country, they really, I mean, they're known for In a Big Country and
Yes.
not much else.
Yeah, they're I kind of put them in the Flock of Seagulls realm. I think I like Flock of Seagulls better,
Yeah, I certainly do.
you
I
know.
mean, I think that those guys had talent. Um, the song In a Big Country prominently features the use of an ebow,
Oh,
and
yeah.
as you mentioned earlier, the ebow is hard to use, so they used it pretty skillfully.
Yeah. Yeah, who else? You know what I see is like I see In Excess kind of like on the evolutionary branch
Hmm.
from like, Flock of Seagulls and Big Country for some reason, even though they're kind of their own thing too, but
Yeah, they kind of bridge that gap from kind of like new wave to rock because I think they, in some ways, wanted to be kind of like a Rolling Stones kind of, like not not hard rock, but kind of like blues rock band. But they also had um, a lot of that, those new wave kind of trappings like keyboards and. Um,
yeah. Well, and the guitar sound too,
mhm.
like their guitar sounds very bright and crisp.
That's actually that's an interesting concept right there. People will often talk about how Prince had, how he got his sound, and his guitar was very, very bright. He played that kind of Telecaster looking guitar, and apparently he wanted his music to sound good on a Sony Walkman. So
So, yeah,
he
good
engineered a
good
sound
call.
with that sound's going to cut through. Those little speakers in the Walkman headphones weren't, they weren't like the cans that we wear today that have all the bass response. And
Yeah.
um, I
That's
mean,
interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know a lot about Prince's guitar sound. It never really even occurred to me to take it apart though he's an amazing guitar player. Like like
mhm.
Prince just can tear it up when he wants to. I saw this
Yeah.
video one time of they were doing a tribute for George Harrison. And
Yes.
so they have a bunch of people on stage, and Prince is one of the people, right? And so at some point, they goad him into doing a guitar solo. And so he plays the solo on like My Guitar Gently Weeps or whatever it is, right? And then he's gonna stop. And there's somebody standing behind him, and they're pushing him, like, go, keep going. Like it's kind of funny because he kind of does it and then he kind of backs up, like he's going to stop. And then they start shoving him out there and he just goes for it again. And then at the end, and I guess he was he's done this a bunch, but like he picks his guitar up and he just like throws it over his shoulder like this. And then there's a guy standing behind him, like his guitar tech catches it. And I'm like, did they practice that? Because you don't just do that, right? Like I mean, like football players, they don't just go out and play football. Like they practice, they throw the ball back and forth.
Yeah. Well,
Like
I would guess that like it's very well practiced, but it's never something that Prince said, I'm going to throw my guitar straight up in the air. You better catch it or you're going to lose your job. I bet it was just like he threw the guitar up in the air one day and walked off stage and they're like, oh shit.
yeah. Well, I mean, you could hurt somebody, like guitars are heavy, they're made of wood, they're hard,
Right.
But like also, like what do you do? Do you get like an old junky guitar and say, okay, hey, we're gonna go in the parking lot and I'm gonna practice throwing this thing over my shoulder. You gotta catch it. Like do they do that thing where we're like, okay, we're gonna just stand facing each other in the parking lot and throw the guitar back and forth, and then we'll take a step back to see how far we can get it. Like,
I would imagine that Prince wasn't involved, but yeah, that the crew has practiced that with, junk guitars.
no way, dude. I maybe, but I feel like Prince probably had to practice it because I mean, like just picking the thing up and throwing it, you could hit yourself on the chin, or you could maybe not get enough clearance. Because you have to get a little bit of clearance to give people a chance to catch it. If you just threw it over your shoulder like this, like it would just hit the ground unless someone was standing right back there. And they might get clonked.
Yeah, no, that's true. I've heard about similar stories where like Brian Setzer was throwing his vintage like 50s
Ah.
Gretsch, and it was plugged in, and he threw it, but he was standing on the cord, so it like went
Oh.
flying, and it stopped, and it went and hit the ground, and
Oh.
something broke.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, yeah. What do people do? I guess if it's your business, you're like, okay, we just got a couple of guitars, we're gonna sacrifice it. And I wouldn't be even surprised too. They got like, oh, we got this old Gibson. I never play that thing. We'll just throw the Gibson, like it could be something expensive to us. Like I would never throw anything expensive. I'm like, I paid too much money for this. I might try and sell it. I mean, like though I could probably
Right.
pick out a couple old guitars. Well, I'm like, this is a piece of junk. I could chuck this,
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's funny when you read about like Kurt Cobain's crew like trying to patch up guitars that he had destroyed, because he was smashing them into the amp. And I think that he probably like was hurting his touring budget by like you can't buy new guitars all the time, so they were trying to like fix up old guitars that he had smashed. But then sometimes like he would see the reason, he would actually use like cheaper guitars when he was going to smash one, like
yeah.
like cheap Strats or whatever. um,
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you wouldn't want to smash something that worked well, right? Why would you smash it? I mean, I get it. Like you're like the fans are going crazy and you're like, you're trying to show your angst or whatever it is, right?
mm-hmm.
Trying to express your I don't know, whatever it is like about, like contempt for capitalist society or whatever. I don't know what it would be, but then again, if you're a practical person like me, I'm like, that thing costs a couple $100. Like, why I'm not gonna smash it.
Mm-hmm.
It was
It's funny.
expensive.
I was reading a thing about like the history of Elvis's guitars, and he had a couple of onstage accidents, and I don't remember how it was caused, but it was probably something where he was throwing it to the roadie. Maybe that's where Brian Setzer gets it, but where it didn't make it, or the guy wasn't there to catch it in time, and so he broke a couple of guitars that way. But he always, well, in the two cases that I remember, he gave the guitar to somebody who was at the show. Like one of them, he just threw it to this woman and said, "It's yours now."
The broken guitar.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
But
funny.
it's like people would often say like, "Oh yeah, these guys were huge rock stars. They could have had as many guitars as they want." But I think most musicians, they are really pretty faithful to a few instruments.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I think people have the instrument they like. Hopefully they're not smashing it, right? They're probably not, right?
Right.
You got a smasher, you got a keeper,
Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't
So
have any smashers.
yeah, yeah, I know, I know. I wish I had some smashers. I could make some space. I can't smash anything. I just feel so stupid. Right? Um, yeah. So what was that? That was the question. Like, what are you smashing, or what are you
No, no.
playing?
Oh, that was what are you listening
Oh
to?
yeah, what are you
And
listening to? Yeah,
that
you're
went on
listening.
a big tangent.
Yeah, so you're listening to some Flock of Seagulls. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just a really appreciating how, um, he did something very simple, but he made like his playing on Iran, for instance, very simple. In fact, there was a video where they show how they do it, and they're like, it was just like a couple of years ago. They're old guys, and he says at the end, he says, "It's very simple when you know how." But it was a very unique sound that they had.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they worked it out, they had a
Mm-hmm.
vision. I bet they didn't have that vision, like that song wholly formed before they wrote it. Like someone probably kind of ran into like the riff or like some piece of the song, and then they kind of just sat down together and worked out the rest and added some lyrics, and then they're like, oh, we need a bridge here or whatever, and then they kind of made something up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it could have started with that guitar with that delay, um, and then it's basically, um, I think it's like a, well, anyways, it's sort of two chords, and the interval is what makes it sound so angular and 80s and new wave.
Yeah.
So it was like it was probably born out of that chord progression.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, I think you can do a lot with less, So I think there's nothing wrong with a one chord, two chord song, three chords, like everybody's doing the three chord rock song. Why not a two chord rock song, right? Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Lately,
Yeah, well, there's probably a little more to it than that, but
yeah, well, yeah, lately I haven't been listening to a lot. I was trying to make it a point of listening to something today before we did this. And so I listened to this electronic music. It was called, what was it called? Let me get it out here again. It's called Exit Chamber.
Exit Chamber, that's the group.
Yeah, well, I think it's just one person doing, music on the synthesizer. It's probably like a Euro rack or something, right? But they had a bunch of songs. One was Orbiting a Dead Star.
Whoa, cool.
Right. And the other one's called Toroid, Pillars of Creation. But it sounds very Kianoskatsi, or, kind of like that ambient, kind of like expansive synth kind of sound, So I don't know. I listened to that. When I was thinking about it, though, as I was listening, I'm also listening to some podcasts. And in one of the podcasts, they were interviewing a guy who is he works at, or he was the founder of a company that makes Eurorack equipment, and they're called Intelligel. And he's talking about how he got the company started and stuff like that, and what they do at the company and how they design their products. But he mentions too, like, how he got his start. And he said one of the things he did is he took engineering in college, but he also took a class called How to Listen. And I was like, wow, that's kind of amazing. I should take a class like that, like how to listen. But the way he described it was for audio engineers. So they would, he kind of mentioned something in there where he said, they'd train you how to listen. They would train you how to hear, frequency in a particular band.
Okay.
Right, or hear sound in a particular frequency band, and it's probably a lot more than that too. So I kind of Googled, how to listen, right? But most of the stuff that I found was kind of like that interpersonal stuff. Like it was like how to listen to another person, or how to make someone feel that you're really hearing what they say. They weren't really talking about the audio side of things, but that was actually interesting too. But then anyway, I thought, like, when you sit down and listen to an album, it's more, like oftentimes what I'm doing is I'm like fiddling with my phone, or looking up stuff on the internet, or reading a book, or doing something else while I'm listening to music. I'm not just listening to the music, right? And so today I sat down for half an hour and I was like, okay, I'm just going to listen to this album and not be distracted by anything else. And it was kind of interesting, and I was like, you know what, I think I got to do that more often. Schedule some
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a girlfriend, and her dad was he was a big jazz guy, and he had like some old 70s speakers or whatever, and like a good amp and everything. And he liked to actively listen, like when how like somebody will be showing you a piece of music, and then they'll like listen to this part right here, this part great. And it's kind of like when you go see a movie with somebody, and they're they've seen it before, and they're pumping up certain parts of it. Could be annoying, but it's also it's clear that that person is appreciating, and that they have they've studied that piece of music. Rick Beato had an older brother who did that with him, and it helped him to appreciate well the deeper workings, the inner workings of a music piece,
Yeah.
as opposed to just listening to a song that
Yeah.
that was a hit on the radio and
Oh,
liked
yeah.
me for that reason.
I think there's two things there though. Like there's one, it's like listening and, deeply listening and trying to like, actively listen to something. Right. And I feel like actually during that process, everything is silent, except for the music. You're just,
Mm-hmm.
right. But then the second one is like listening to something and discussing it and, talking with someone else and pointing out the merits and maybe reviewing something. So that's like a different kind of listening, maybe like a review kind of listening. I don't know what you'd call that one. So I don't know. I feel like there's two things there. Like one, it's like you listen and you talk about something, you know, and then another one where you're just going to listen. Like you're like, okay, it's like a meditation.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to sit there. You're going to kind of meditate on the music.
Well, I think that's one of those things that it's similar to like being a foodie or something like that. You need to um, have done uh, some acclimating. You need to have some skills of identifying flavors or whatever. You need to, uh, the first time you eat food, you're like, oh, that's really good. But you can't really articulate what's good about it or, like describe the flavors in any way or pick out like what the ingredients might be. And so the more that you kind of learn about song structure, um, or music theory or whatever it is, sonic texture, the more that you have the ability to appreciate um, what goes into the mix.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you can get that too by discussing it,
Mm-hmm.
like, bouncing ideas around and but I think like there's also something where, if you're just listening, like you can kind of see things that maybe, it's like a different perspective or like you're getting kind of like down into the weeds of the thing, and close to the earth, where like if you're discussing it, you kind of take a step back and you look at the whole thing and you talk about it and rewind or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, I gotta make that a thing. I gotta do that more often, you know? Maybe I gotta, one of the things I think would be good is for the music that I've recorded, I should go back and listen to it, and review it a few times, like maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
like needs some time to itself. I find I oftentimes I'm recording something and I have the guitar in my hand. So like I'm listening, but I'm also playing. And so that's a different experience too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
what are you, speaking of playing, what are you playing?
um, what am I playing? I have been playing something. I've been playing uh, a couple of things, like the theme from the Pink Panther.
Oh, that's great.
Um, and I really like the Mission Impossible theme, because the
Yeah.
melodies are they're outside of kind of the usual pentatonic box, and you really have to consciously think about how you're going to finger those notes. Um,
Are you doing that with the band?
no, no, I'm
Oh,
just doing this for my own amusement.
I'm kind of jealous because actually I really dig that music. I have a Dweezil Zappa's record. Like he came out with a record called Automatic, like a long time ago, probably like in the early 2000s, right? He had actually had two of his records. So before he started doing the thing where he tours and does the Zappa does Zappa thing, and he does these guitar workshops. It's kind of just silly. It's just like, it's like one of those music for musicians kind of things. And I think that
Mhm.
kind of, I don't know, it doesn't excite me. Though he came out with a record, him and his brother, and they're like, it's like they're like teenagers. And I forget what it's called, and it's got like songs on it like My Mom's a Space Cadet or something like that, right? But then he came out with Automatic, and it's basically just him. All the sounds are guitars, and then there's one bass and one drum, and it's like Dale Bozio or somebody is playing drums. So he's got like this
Oh, Terry
great,
Buzzio.
yeah, Terry Bozio, yeah, Dale. Oh, yeah, she was the singer. I
Yeah.
mixed up the names, but um, but yeah, so the drums are just totally great, right? And but then it's got all these sounds and they're layered on there, right? And but it's all guitars, so he does it all with guitar, so it's great. And the playing is awesome, and the songs are really creative. And he does a cover of the Mission Impossible theme,
Oh, cool.
and it's super great.
I'd
You
like to
know,
hear that.
yeah, it's super good. You know, I
One of
like
the
that actually better than any of the Zappa does Zappa stuff. And actually, I've never been a big fan of Frank Zappa for some reason. I like the idea of Frank Zappa more than the actual music of Frank Zappa. You know what I mean?
hmm Yeah. Yeah, I have not listened to a lot of Frank Zappa because, what I have heard is um well, it's wacky. It's pretty wacky music.
Yeah,
Um
yeah. There's
it's
some
impressive in its
songs.
own way, but
Yeah, yeah. There's some songs on there that I like, but I feel like the songs that I like are not like Zappa favorites by all the fans. So it's like I kind of like the songs that would be throwaways. You know, like I
mhm.
love that song. What's it called? It's like something like there's like the lyric is like there's no way to delay that trouble coming every day, and it's about the race riots down in LA,
Oh, wow.
which actually makes it like really like telling now. Like
Mhm.
you could hear it. I'm surprised nobody's playing it now, right? Because it just really fits the situation we're in right now. It's just, yeah, but it's an awesome song. It's just like a blues rock song with some harmonica and stuff, so it doesn't have like super, it just sounds like 60s garage rock, but I like that better than a lot of the weird, guitar solos that are just go on forever, or they're super angular and they're like maybe too creative or something, right? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of think like he's one of those artists you kind of really have to just buy in, or you're not going to get it. And
Yeah, yeah, he's got some diehard fans that are just, they just live for Zappa. I don't know how you do that, but yeah, I don't know.
yeah, it
Um,
takes all kinds.
yeah, yeah, I mean, I don't have any. Like I said, I would vote for Zappa for president. There used to be bumper stickers, Zappa for. I would vote for Zappa.
Uh,
I
you know,
did not buy all his records though. Like I think I got a couple songs on my phone and that's it. Maybe one song. you know, right?
yeah, well, uh, it doesn't really take much for me to prefer them for president to what we've got currently.
Oh,
I,
for
I was
sure.
talking
Yeah.
about the band, the Presidents of the United States of America,
Hmm.
and they had this song called Peaches, which I hated when it came out, but I've been hearing it recently, and it's really cool. Like that's got some kind of like dirty guitar, and it's got this kind of cool drive to it. And
Yeah.
I wish that they were the presidents of the United States of
Yeah,
America
I would have
right
voted
now.
for those guys
Yeah.
too. Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing is sometimes like I'll hear music or someone will suggest something to me and so I'll listen to it and I feel like you can be in a receptive mood or not in a receptive mood. It depends
Mhm.
on, what the situation is. And I feel like sometimes I listen to stuff and I kind of just shrug it off and forget about it. Or I don't even listen to the whole thing. I start and I'm like, this is just not what I'm into at the moment. But then later I'll come back to it and I'll think like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Plus there's a lot of music like I've heard it so many times, like my favorite music from 10 years ago and now I don't listen to it at all. I would have a hard time like not liking it today, but I don't really have a taste for it or my tastes have changed.
Mhm. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, there were some things that I liked a lot in the 90s, and I just, even if I hear it, it's sort of it's got I feel kind of lukewarm to it. Whereas a lot of the music from the 80s, I I really love listening to it now. I mean, like Flock of Seagulls,
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
come back
sometimes
to
I
that.
go back and I listen to something that I was aware of but didn't really spend a lot of time with.
Hmm
Right. Yeah. So so what about guitar sounds? Have you been playing the guitar?
I have been playing the guitar, and I think the kind of the latest development is that I'm trying to, um, or I've just discovered that a drier sound works better over music. You know, if I'm playing music, playing the guitar to music or over a looper, um, I I'm not enjoying as much of reverb or long decay delay over it. Um, I feel like it needs to be um, a drier sound to fit or to
Yeah,
cut
are you
through the music.
talking the backing or the lead or the foreground or both?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Oh, are you talking about like the backing or the lead or foreground or both?
Um, I would say both, actually. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of favoring a less overdriven for backing type guitar. But I still I'm liking that a little bit more dry. And then with solos, um, I definitely I'm using more overdrive and less repeats on delay, um, and very little or no reverb. And
Yeah.
I used to kind of always have like reverb or I'd always keep the reverb the same and then use a slapback delay. And now I'm enjoying just one or the other.
Hmm. Yeah,
And in
so
fact, I've been thinking about getting some kind of you have that that pedal controller where you can kind of create
oh
loops
yeah.
or patches.
Yeah, we should talk about that one day.
Yeah, yeah. But I would probably have patches that were just like two effects. It wouldn't be complicated at all, or like I don't know, maybe even one effect
Yeah.
for some of them. But like, I'm not enjoying stacking up my kind of
Yeah.
delay and reverb
I would say there's
effects anymore.
probably a couple things in play there, right? One, with a lot of distortion, you tend to get a more compressed signal
Hmm.
and you lose the dynamic. So the attack, like you hit a note and it's about the same volume as the note, right, like immediately afterwards, right? Like the
Hmm.
follow up, the sustain behind it is the same volume as the note you just hit. So you just kind of disappear. Though if without all the distortion, you get like with the clean sound, you get like a sharp attack. So the sound spikes really loud and then fades away, right? You know what I mean? And so it jumps out of the mix, right? Like it kind of can punch through, you know? Um, and then the other thing is maybe with all the delay, you're filling in a lot of the space between the notes, right? So again, like even if you have like a lot of delay, that tends to like create like maybe a more compressed signal because you have a lot of like layering going on behind your note if you have like a lot of feedback or something, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Well,
so
that's
yeah, so you
actually very.
basically, I guess basically I'd be saying you lose dynamic with all those adding all those effects, and as you take the effects away, you get like the dynamic of the guitar back.
Right. Yeah, which is it's actually kind of funny because well that uh, one of my most used effects on guitar is the compressor or the compressor sustainer. And lately I've been finding that I'm liking the compressor by itself, and when I switch to overdrive or distortion, I want to turn off the compressor. Um,
Oh yeah, I could see that.
but
I
I always kind of like stacked those in the
huh.
past.
Yeah, I never use the compressor. I have a couple, but I don't know why I just don't use them, or I tried them and they don't. I don't know. They just never did anything for me, or I missed the utility in them. Like,
I like the tone that you get out of it. I mean, yes, there's like it does remove some of the dynamics, but I don't I don't pick particularly hard, and I don't like my, you know, softer picked notes to be really quiet. Um, but yeah, mainly it's the tone. I like the,
Yeah.
that sound that you get from a compressor.
Yeah. I guess I'm just playing alone. So
Hmm.
like lately my sound is like all the big muff. Like so I'm playing like totally I'm trying to get the thickest sound I can get. So I'm playing the big muff through two delay pedals into the amp. Yeah. Right.
Hmm.
But then
Well,
again,
I
there's
think
nothing
also fuzz.
yeah, there's nothing behind there. So I'm not like layering over everything. I'm trying to fill in those gaps, you know?
Right. Yeah. Well, fuzz, fuzz and a compressor aren't really a great combination in my mind. I think like
Oh yeah.
fuzz I would like um, pair with delay,
Yeah.
no compressor, no reverb.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess too, with the delay, like, I mean, with the compressor and the fuzz, do you put the compressor before or after the fuzz? If you put it before, you're going to feed like a hotter signal in, and some fuzzes actually don't like that.
Hmm.
It just kind of like, I don't know, kind of compacts the signal going in, or I don't know, compresses it too much. And then
Well,
if you put it afterwards, then the compressor is kind of screwed up because it's getting like a super hot signal, super compressed signal going in, and it kind of pushes it all the way up to the top of its limit. I mean, obviously, you can probably use these things, and adjust them to taste to get a particular sound, but in like a wider ranging practical situation, like it seems like a bad combination.
right. Yeah, I mean, I would think that you'd get a lot of noise if you put a compressor before the fuzz, and it would just amplify the noise.
Oh, yeah, good point. Yeah, or if you had any noise coming out of your fuzz, the compressor, like if you put it afterwards, it would just like boost it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not as bad as
Yeah.
the other way around, but still they
Yeah.
don't really work well together.
Yeah. Lately I've been playing, I will show this. This is my favorite Big Muff right here. This was like way back in the olden days. Um, this was it was a Swollen Pickle. So Swollen Pickle was the original Way Huge brand, but before they were bought by Seymour Duncan or Dunlap, right? I guess they're owned by Dunlap, right?
Okay.
And now they remake them, but before that you couldn't get one. So it was like, oh, these were pedals that were made in like the early 90s or late 90s and you can't get them anymore. So I was like, well, I'll clone one.
Hmm.
And it uses it's like the Big Muff is built on 4 transistors, like all versions of it. This one actually, in place of the 4 transistors, it uses like a 16-pin dip, but it's like a chip, like one chip that has 4 2N3904 style transistors on it. So it's one chip with 4 transistors, right? So it's basically the same circuit, but just like the physical part, like 4 of them are combined into one piece instead of separate. And I think the guy, maybe his name's George Trips, who made the company, right, and did the thing. He said in some interview, he was like, yeah, I think somebody asked him like, why did you choose this? And I don't think he even chose the part for the sound. He said that he chose it because it was one less part to stuff into the circuit board, right? So instead of actually 3 less parts, right? Because you
Yeah.
only had to put one chip in instead of 4 transistors, right? So that saved him some time. I think he assembled the original effects himself. This one has a great sound to it, and I think part of the deal is the transistors. And those transistors they're kind of like basically bog standard, but I think that nowadays when you get that same transistor, the gains are higher. So I think on this one, the gain on the transistors is a little bit lower. And I think that gives it a particular sound. It's particularly smooth. And then I think he made a mistake or he maybe it was an error or he did it on purpose. But the tone control on the original Swollen Pickle is a little different than the original Big Muff tone control. Now Big Muff, like Electro Harmonics, made the Big Muff with a range of different parts, and they would change it up. So their tone controls on the Big Muff through different versions change also. But the swollen pickle is different also. But it has like a kind of a cool thing. It's kind of got this mid scoop to it, right? But also as you turn it down into the low end, it gets like a super like sub bassy kind of sound. Like the low end just really comes through. It's got like a super low end, you know?
Oh, very cool. So
Yeah,
was
it's,
the where did the name Shiva Sonic come from?
oh, I just made that up.
Okay, it's a
I
good,
was
it's a
just
good
like,
name.
I'm making a pedal, and I had this book on Tibetan motifs. So it's just a bunch of black and white drawings of these Tibetan designs. So I basically just copied one of those Tibetan designs. Like I drew it, but I just looked at the book and I kind of copied some of their designs. And then I was like, oh, it's kind of got a, actually, I guess Shiva, like Shiva Sonic sounds more Indian, and the Tibetan
Mhm.
stuff is like, should be like more Chinese. I don't know. Like, right. So I'm mixing my cultures there. You know, I think, you know, what happened is a friend of mine came over with a drum machine, but it looked like some old 70s kind of like, um, like vinyl wood grain box that you could have bought at Radio Shack. And it had a bunch of
Cool.
like radio buttons on the top that you can press to get different beats. And it was called the Radel Sonic. And it was an
Hmm.
Indian tabla drum machine. So it would play these different tabla patterns. Right. And so Cyrus got this thing, you know, he brought it over. And I think I borrowed the name from that, you know. So they were like,
It's
oh,
it's a good name.
yeah, I thought it was good, you know. Shiva, isn't that like the god of like destruction? She has all, I think maybe she's the
Yeah, a
one with
bunch
all
of
the arms,
arms.
you
Yeah.
know. So I don't know. Yeah, so I play that, and then I have this other delay I've been using. This is like this 4-second delay. So this is actually a DIY project, and it's by this guy called the Electric Druid. And it's a digital delay. It has like some kind of microcontroller chip on it, and then a couple chips that are like memory. It's like it's got like a like 2K of memory or something on it, right? And then it has a couple op amps, and it's got tap tempo, and it does up to 4 seconds of delay, which is a lot of delay. You know, I mean, actually nowadays you can get like a lot of the fancy delays, and they have a lot of delay,
Hmm.
right? Or you can get looper pedals and they'll have a ton of delay. But anyway, I got this for fun. Right, I got I bought 2 circuit boards, and so I built 2 of those for fun, and it's kind of fun to play. So you know, you got the 4-second delay, um, and so it's kind of a little different, like playing, you know, like
Hmm.
along with 4 seconds of whatever you're playing. It's kind of hard to sync up force at 4 seconds, but
Right. But you know, if you have the tap tempo, you'd probably be, syncing up with the, the beat. Like let's say you're playing with the drummer, so you would tap in your tempo, and then you just play.
yeah,
Like that's probably how that Paul Reynolds guy got the rhythm for Iran, just by
yeah,
tapping
maybe.
along to the drum machine.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing is, like at 4 seconds, you're usually playing like a measure, or like, you know, you're playing like more than the beat. So if I tap my foot on time with the beat, I'm probably only using like a second or less, some fraction of a second, you know,
Hmm.
right? I guess, you know, it would be good with this. I don't know, like maybe I should suggest it to him. Like, what if you could set the tap tempo to be a division? So, like, if you wanted to get the 4 seconds of delay in, maybe like you could do divisions of 2 or 4. So you're tapping on quarter notes, but then it's like setting the beat in like whole notes or something, right?
Maybe that could be. Maybe that's something you could innovate on this the circuit.
Yeah. Maybe the a big piece of it is this EEPROM. So it has a tap tempo and stuff, but it's like a microcontroller. So it's programmed, like he wrote a bunch of software that runs on this one chip, right? And
Hmm.
so it does some of the delay. You know, it manages the delay and writes to the memory. It's got this other problem though. I built the whole thing, right? And you know, I plugged it in, and it's working. But I noticed that sometimes when I plug it in and you start it up, it starts making this sound, right? So if the delay is on, like it's not bypassed when you turn it on, you hear
Hmm.
this digital hash. It's just like, right? And you can hear it running through the delay. So if you have the echoes up, it runs for a while, right? Like if you have the repeats up. And so I built the thing and I was like, oh shit, like it's kind of working, but what's wrong? And that sounds like a sound that's coming from the digital system,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's hard to debug. Like, if there wasn't enough gain or something wasn't working, you're like, okay, I could change this transistor or put a new resistor in here to fix these problems, right? But anyway, so he's on the DIY Stompbox forum, so I just posted there, and he said, oh no, that's a thing that happens because the digital memory is like in a random state when the chip boots up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's actually, that's like it's a feature, not a bug, right? He kind of suggested like, yeah, maybe I'll fix that in the future. I kind of feel like maybe he should have put it in his copy for, right. I mean, not like I'm not like angry or anything, but I it would have been good for just to be able to read that in there as a note, like very clearly marked out that this happens. It's
Yeah,
actually
well, I
turns
mean,
out to not be a big deal.
no, I mean, I think like let's say you show up for a gig. If you show up 5 minutes before the gig and you plug the thing in right before you start playing a song, then everyone's going to hear that. But if you show up, 15 minutes before, then the song
Yeah.
is long gone by the time you actually start playing.
Yeah, it's actually not that big a deal. The only thing I would have like where I would see it would be a problem is if the thing came unplugged like while you were
Oh.
playing and then you plugged it back in, or if how sometimes those daisy chained like effects connectors, like if they touch something and they short out because the outer ring is positive,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they're positive on the outside, so that if they touch something that's grounded, it can cut the power out. Like in your digital effects will like kind of, you know, like reboot, sometimes like that
Mm-hmm.
happens on my Behringer, that phase shifter we talked about, right? But anyway, like if that happened here, all of a sudden you might get some of this hash, that might be kind of a drag. But
Right.
anyway, this thing's kind of fun. What was good is I like these knobs. I put these big giant knobs on here, and so these are just like nice to turn. They just have a nice
Mm-hmm.
feel to them. I have this other delay too. I really like this one. This is the Bunar Donner Prince. Totally great delay. I use that one all the
Yeah, it's a
time.
beauty.
Today I used them both together. So, it was
Did
fun.
you use any of the like the different playheads on the Bunar, like the
Yeah, I think I had it set to like the two on the end on. So it's kind of like dun 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 dun
Okay, that's cool.
dun dun, right? Yeah. I actually, what I like about both of those is the I forget what this, I guess the guy calls this the digi delay. It's got a high pass and a low pass filter. So you can kind of sculpt your delay sound, so the echoes, you can kind of turn up the bass or turn down the treble, or turn one up and the other down. The Donner Prince Bunar has a tone control too on the delay, which is kind of good. It's just got one knob.
We should talk a little bit about how the Bunar works and maybe what it's descended from.
Oh yeah, this thing is great. I think it's based on the Benson Echo Rec, which was a kind of like a, it had like a, it wasn't, I don't think it was an oil can, but it had like kind of a cylinder inside it, and essentially it had like a tape head that wrote to the cylinder, and then as the cylinder spun around, it was kind of like a circular piece of tape. The signal would come back, and then it had four play heads spaced around the cylinder, right? And you could turn them on or off with little buttons, right? So this kind of simulates that with the four buttons here. So you can turn on which playheads you want, and you can get kind of rhythmic delays. Pink Floyd used that. So if you think
Mm.
back on the early albums like Metal, like I think you can hear the Benson Echo Rec on there. Yeah, this delay is amazing. I love it. It's my favorite one. Of course, like
Cool. Yeah.
it's digital on the inside. I mean, everybody's like, oh, I like the analog stuff, but I don't. If it sounds good, it sounds good.
Yeah. I don't know. I obviously there are differences between digital and analog delays, but I think that a lot of it is just sort of it's kind of cork sniffing kind of thing. I think maybe one of the things that makes more of a difference is like tube versus solid state, um, or maybe I'm getting that reversed, but like this pedal, this is the Dan Electro Real Echo. It has a switch for tube and solid state, and it what it does is it has like it affects kind of like the the length of the delays.
Hmm.
Um,
You know, it's funny you should bring that up. Catalan Bread makes an Echo Rec kind of clone also, right? So it does the same thing. It mimics the multi-head delay, right? And they also make another one called the Bell Epoch, which is it's a clone of like the what's that tape delay that's like super famous, like everybody uses it from the 60s, you know, Echoplex. That's
yes,
it, the
yeah.
Echoplex, right? So, so they make the Bell Epoch, right, which is a clone of the Echoplex. And I think the thing about the Benson and the Echoplex is they both had a preamp circuit built into them, and you plug them into the wall. So the preamp, like instead of running off a 9-volt battery, like it ran off like 20 volts or more, right? And so, like everybody said, like the preamp sounded so good, and actually, uh, Catalan Bread went so far as to make a pedal that is just the preamp from the Echoplex,
Hmm.
right? And then they often tout how in their Benson Echo Rec and their Bell Epoch how they simulated the preamp circuit in each of those in each of their like founding effects or their ancestor effects, right? The original. Um, and you know, so I think that that's kind of part of the sound too, right? You know, is like, you know, like you're saying, like using a tube delay, but you know, part of the tube is the distortion and like, you know, the way it boosts the signal, right? And some of the
Mm-hmm.
sound you get there, right? Rather than digital delays, which are trying to, you know, reproduce exactly what they see at the input, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I like um, this echo as it's fairly dry, but the I should say it doesn't have a lot of repeats on it, and I use kind of like a slapback in terms of the length, but I like the effect that it has on the tone of the guitar,
Oh yeah.
um, and it works
Yeah.
really well with music.
Yeah,
With
for
playing
sure.
to music.
Yeah. I totally agree 100%, you know. Yeah, the I can just have like a little bit of delay on like all the time and it just sounds good, you know.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
so
gotta have
that's
something, just a little something.
yeah. Yeah, that's kind of my sound today anyway, right? You know, you
Hmm.
change your sound up, you know.
It's your
Um
prerogative.
yeah. Yeah, so what else are you working on? Are you working on anything?
Um, you know, um, I'm at a shopping stage in my projects. I've got the TIDA page open to order my parts. I've got
Oh, you haven't ordered the parts yet.
I have not ordered the parts. And
Okay, Kirk, you know, I might just send you those parts. I'm
well, there's a
having this
lot of parts.
problem. Yeah, well, yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, and that the documentation for the trem shifter is not very good. I mean, it's okay, but it's like it's just not well formatted and it's hard to read. You know, it could have
Well,
been easier.
I suppose my problem is like the conversion because I'm like, oh, 1N capacitor.
Oh,
I have to like figure that out in the units that they use.
yeah, yeah. That like when I first started, that was pretty confusing.
Hmm.
You know, yeah. My other big problem though is the desk. Like I'm just like
Yes.
you can't see it here, but it's all just covered in stuff. You know, so like I can't get any work done. I have to clean the desk off. Just
Yeah.
I mean, it's
I
seriously
I
like
relate.
piled with stuff. There's like no room. I can't do anything, right? So that's my deal. I got to clean the desk, break out the trem shifter, And when I break out the trem shifter, if you don't have your parts, I'll have to just put some parts together just to get you to build it. I was actually, speaking of that, I was thinking about I was thinking about how I wanted to design it. So I had done this bloom pedal, and I had these black knobs, and I put the red knob for the volume. So I think what I'm going to do is the trem shifter has a volume control, and then it has two controls, a rate and a depth for the tremolo, and then there's a rate and a depth for the filter. So I think I'm going to do each of the pairs in a different color. So maybe we'll do like black for the tremolo, maybe like gray for the, the filter, and then red for the volume.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I think that'll be fun. I got to order the knobs though. We'll price this one out. It'd be kind of interesting to see what the costs are.
I ordered a bunch of knobs from some other. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, we can talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I have a ton of knobs, but like, I bought a bunch of extras earlier because I'm like, oh, great, I can use these anywhere. But then as I build the things, I realize like, oh, you know what? There's a new knob, or on this one, I want to do it in colors instead of just making them all black. And, there's a whole plethora of knobs, a whole world of them, So
Right.
I think it's probably, I think my new strategy now is not to buy knobs in bulk.
I think that's a good one, unless you kind of like you're shooting for a kind of an aesthetic and you have like a bunch of projects in mind. Like I think it would be kind of cool to go to Love My Switches and just buy knobs that would make cool, it's like, oh, this would be good for like a fuzz pedal or something like that.
Yeah. I think I did that, but I'd buy some things and then I'm like, well, as long as I'm ordering, I'll buy some extras. And then now I have a bunch of extras that I'm not using because I want to get like a different one. So I think knowing what you're going to build first and then ordering the knobs for it later. I mean, otherwise like things that I would buy extras of is like jacks and switches because every pedal's going to use those. Right. Like I bought a bunch of Switchcraft jacks. I bought like 50. So like I'm like, okay, I can make 25 pedals, right? That sounds like something I might do in the next year or whatever. Right. So I'll buy those and they're not going to change. I'm always going to use them. They might change, but the Switchcraft ones are pretty good. I like the 1590B sized box or the BB box. I'm not a huge fan of the A sized, the small ones, So I'm probably going to build something in a B or a BB size, and the Switchcraft jacks will work great there, But I think the knobs I'm going to like in the future, I'm going to just buy them on as needed.
Yeah. No, I think that's wise. I actually bought a bunch of knobs from I don't remember which site, but they're the wrong size for the pots that I have. So like I've been using guitar knobs for some of my pedals.
Yeah. Shit. I know what you're talking about because there's a couple shaft sizes. There's one that's like 6 millimeters and another one that's like 5.25. It's like just off by a tiny bit. And so if you get a knob, I have a couple knobs that I just don't fit on anything because they're just the little bit smaller size. And every place I go to, they always have those slightly larger, pot shafts, right? So yeah, that's frustrating,
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, we got to get back on our pedal production,
Yeah. Well, you've been pretty prolific this spring or whatever season that was.
Yeah, earlier I've been off it for a month or two now, yeah, I sold that one pedal and I got like kind of a lead, like someone kind of asked about buying another one. And I was like, yeah, I got another one. Here's a link to the Let's Trade pedals, but then they didn't follow up. So we'll see. Hopefully I can sell another one and we'll see how that goes,
Yeah.
I had some other pedals too. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh my my Let's Trade pedals post on Reddit, and I'll take a picture of the group of pedals that I got for sale, and maybe the pictures will inspire people.
Oh, I think so. I mean, we know how people fetishize gear. Um, like just knowing that it exists isn't enough. You want to, you want to have like a picture in your mind of it, or um, a video demo or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, you want to try it,
Hmm.
so I got to work on that. Lately I've been also working with the Euro Rack synthesizer. I set it up lately and to practice with, so I play like a drone on it, like I'll tune it to C or something, and then I'll just play along, and that's kind of fun. I recorded some of that, and I was thinking like, oh, I should put it on our channel. Might be fun to practice too.
Oh, absolutely. I really enjoy playing to a loop. Um, a lot of times, what I've done is I've found like a backing track for like blues in G or blues in A or whatever. But um, it can be hard to find something that you actually um, that that appeals to your particular aesthetic.
Yeah, this is more. It would just be like, I don't know, something kind of weird to play along with.
Hmm.
Like it's not like it's just a drone, so it's a single note. So you play around that note. It's not like a chord change, and then there's really not much rhythm or anything to it. Like it'll just be like cycling through like harmonic, um, like a harmonic series. Like it'll play a sine wave, and then it'll work its way through a wave table of sine waves with various harmonics added to it, right? So it's kind of like it's basically just all octaves.
Hmm.
But it kind of sounds kind of cool. It's kind of just like it's kind of neutral too. So it's not like I'm playing in a particular style and you have to follow along.
Yeah. No, I think that's good though. I mean, like a lot of times if I'm noodling, I kind of um I don't know, I forget what key I'm in and I'll just land on another note and I'm like, "Oh, I guess I'll play here now." And it's like having a drone. You're kind of playing more musically if you're or anything that you play with. Um anything that kind of sets limits. Um I think
Yeah. Well, I
you
think
need
too,
more.
like you can play in a scale. So you can play, in the major scale or something, and then you can get the flavor for the major, and you kind of always know where the root is
Mhm.
because it's the drone.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of interesting. So you can play like, you could play like I've been really into this thing where I just play the pentatonics and then I'll move a note around. So you can play like, the minor pentatonic, but sharp the third, or or you can play like I was into this thing doing like the Lydian pentatonic. So you sharp the four. So you play like, it's like one minor third, sharp four, five, dominant seven, and octave, right? And it's kind of got a
Mhm.
cool little weird flavor to it. Um, and then and then like if you have the drone in the background, it kind of sets the tonic for that, so you kind of get a better feel for the tonal flavor of a particular scale.
Right. I mean, I looked at that last week and I thought it's cool to to look at these chord or the fingering chart um
Oh,
as sort of a reminder to kind of stay in that realm.
yeah, actually, you know what you should check out is there's this website. It's called Guitar Scientist, and it's basically like, what I did is I wanted to create some tablature for the pentatonics, right? Just so I could keep
Mhm.
a record of the ones that I was playing. And um and so I just Googled like, you know tab generator, and I ran across this site called Guitar Scientist, and it's basically like a tab generator, but it's pretty good. Like it just shows you a fretboard, and you can click to put some dots down, and then you can declare what the root is, and then it'll kind of find those notes all over the fretboard. So you can kind of see what the scale pattern would look like.
Oh, that's cool. Does it does it create any kind of an audio file or something to play
I
along with?
think you can play the notes, like it'll play them, like you can click on them and it'll play them. I actually didn't use it that way. I just wanted to create the tablature. I think you can export a text file with the tab on it too.
Okay.
So that's why I did it. So the other thing, yeah, so I have that. And then I was playing, like, I was trying to make up a song, and it's basically based on, like, imagine like the blues scale, but you took out the 5 and then you added the major 7. So it's like 1 minor third, 4 flat 5, the dominant 7, major 7, and then the octave, right? And so then I was like, well, to understand this better, I should map it out across the fretboard. So I went to the Dr. Scientist and I just wrote the scale down, and I could see what the pattern is. That's not a hard one to do because it's basically just the blues scale, but it was kind of nice just to see it in different positions through the fretboard,
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's a neat tool.
Yeah, and the site is great too, because they don't, I don't remember that they had ads, and it doesn't cost anything, though you do have to make an account. Right. It's kind of cool too, because I think it remembers the stuff locally on your computer too. So like I had logged in, and then it had apparently like saved a bunch of the tabs I'd made, like, 6 months or a year ago, the last time I'd used it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. They had updated it too. So then I had to log in, I think it would save the stuff even without a login. But then if you
Like as a
log in,
cookie.
it's got some other features, so. Yeah,
Cool. I'll
pretty good.
try it out.
I'd recommend it. If you're into like mapping your fretboard out, it's kind of a good tool for that.
Well, it couldn't hurt, like whatever it is. I mean, I think we talked about this last week. You have to practice the guitar to get good at it. And if you don't, if you don't try things out on the fretboard, you don't know what it's going to sound like. You don't know what this interval is going to do when you hit that note. And the more you play, the more you're able to predict what's going to happen when you play a certain interval. And if you want to get away from just playing the pentatonic boxes, you have to step outside of that. And if you know how it's going to sound, it's going to be a lot better for you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Speaking of practice, the other thing I was doing is I have this like this synthesizer. It's a Moog DFAM. So DFAM is like an acronym for drummer from another mother. So Moog has this like a series of sequencers, and they're all mother. So there's like the grandmother, there's the like, I forget, well, there's the Mother 32. So the Mother 32 and the DFAM are kind of related. They're in the same form factor, like they're the same size. They look the same,
Mm-hmm.
They're both like Eurorack compatible. The DFAM though has an 8-step sequencer built in, and then 2 oscillators, right? And they're not quantized, it's all analog, right? And it's probably got some digital parts, but it's mostly analog. Maybe actually a DFAM might be totally analog. The Mother 32 probably has some digital stuff in it because it has kind of a quantizer, and it'll play like quantized scales, and you can kind of program sequences into it. But the DFAM just has an analog 8-step sequencer with 2 rows of knobs, right? And it's supposed to be kind of a drum synthesizer. It doesn't really make drums. It's more like percussion effects. You can kind of do drums with it. So what I did is I set a couple patches up on that, and I was practicing along with that, But it's not like you have to kind of give up the idea of doing like a rock beat. You can
Mm-hmm.
kind of simulate that, but it kind of loses the swing. It's a little too on the money,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what you
and
mean.
it just doesn't sound like the snare doesn't sound quite right because it's just noise. It's like a white noise, and you're like kind of gating that, so it's like psh, psh, right?
It sounds really cool though.
Yeah, other than that, what I did is actually I recorded a couple sequences with the DFAM. So I was thinking about posting those, right, just as practice, right? So I just goofed around with it, made a couple sequences, and then played along with it. So it was kind of good. It was kind of a different way to practice,
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what it's all about, really. It's just um, mixing it up and keeping things interesting and always learning something new.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you know, I mean, and I think also like trying new things is
Yeah,
good, right? So,
yeah,
you know, if you're always doing the same thing, maybe break outside your zone, you know.
right.
Um, yeah, but you know, I'm just home every day now, so there's no playing with other people. So, you know, right, this is great. The machine's kind of, you know, it's got a volume control. So as far as drummers go, it's like amazing.
Hmm.
Actually, it's kind of weak for drums, but you can set the volume, which is great. So,
Yeah,
you know, I can
that's
play
great.
at any volume with it, you know.
Yeah, I need a good drummer to play with at home. I have like I I this is my favorite drum machine. I wish this one worked, but
Oh, the
just
Dr. Rhythm.
yeah, this
Nice.
is a early like this is like an 80 like mid 80s Dr. Rhythm, and it was really cool. It
Does-
just has a very
It doesn't work
simple
now?
sound. No, I got to figure
Oh,
out what's wrong with it, but um
I have like an 808, I think, or a 909, or is it a 7? I forget. I have a 707. It's like this big beige thing. It's about like
okay.
this big. It's really heavy and it has little sliders. You know, it was like an early one. It came out in the 80s, right? But it doesn't
Hmm.
work. The little LCD screen is broken. I kind of wish I could sell it to someone that fixes them or uses it for parts because I'm not going to use it. And then I have another one that's like actually maybe a Dr. Rhythm too,
Yeah,
actually, but it's a
I think
newer
you
one. It's
have a
like
Dr.
blue,
Hmm.
right? So it's more recent than yours, but still like probably from like the 90s or something. And you know, I never use that anymore. You know, though you could program whole sequences in it, whole songs, right? So you could create a song that had multiple sequences, you
Oh,
know.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't think this one can do that. I think this is just, it just does what's on screen. I don't know if you can make like
Yeah.
patches.
Mine kind of it has there's an internal battery and the battery's dead because it's so old, right? You know. I probably bought it in the 2000 era, like around 2000, and it was used, you know. So I don't know. Um,
Wow,
yeah,
that's good.
I'll give it to you. You can use it. If you want it?
No, oh, does it work?
Yeah, it works.
Okay, you just can't see what you're doing.
Uh, Actually, that one works and the LCD works. It's a little dim. It's if you
Oh,
have to have a
okay.
good light on it. You know, the 707, like you don't really want that one because it's kind of like the screen doesn't work and it's old. It doesn't do as much stuff. You know, and it's huge. It's like big. It's like
Hmm. I
I mean,
don't
it's
care about that.
surprisingly large, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other one's little though. I'll give you that other one. You can just play with it, you know. I'm just trying to like. I guess my idea with the whole synthesizer thing was like, oh, can I do something different?
Hmm.
You know, it's not just the convenience. You're like, oh, great, I got the band and I can just start them with a button. You know, right? I could adjust the volume. You know, but I thought like, oh, maybe there's something different in there. You know, you could do something that might be new. You know, or unique, or you know, surprising. We'll
Yeah.
just go to surprising,
Hmm.
right?
Well, I always think, recombining elements, even if it's not, if even if you're not making new sounds, um, like invention is recombining, existing technologies to make something new. So, like how about Jesus and Mary Jane? That's a great example of a band that used kind of like existing forms of popular music combined to make something new. The kind of like mix the Shirelles with like the punk rock guitars.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah, yeah. I think music is ripe for invention. You know,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, I think
Yet no
that's
one
great.
does it. Oh,
Well, no, yeah, that's the thing. It's the successful people are doing it. You know what I mean? And the people that are less successful are just rehashing the old stuff. You know, but then you know some people come in and they see something new and something old and they put it together, or they you know put a new spin on the old thing and they're inventing. You know, right? They're
yeah.
coming up with something new.
Well, the inventive people are doing it. The people who are successful in music right now are, um, I don't know if they're bringing a lot of new sound. I don't know how, like, I don't know what it is that makes popular music popular, um, and what even sets one song apart from another. Because as as we've observed, a lot of popular music um, is using increasingly fewer notes, fewer dynamics, um, a more limited vocabulary.
Yeah.
Um,
I saw a guy do a podcast on that and it was pretty amazing.
the
He
death of
did
melody.
maybe it was, I forget who it was, but they looked at lyrics. So they,
Hmm.
you know, they looked at the number of unique words. They looked at the volume. So he made the argument essentially like all music nowadays is louder, like everything is louder.
Mm.
You know, so you have less dynamic range. You know, you don't have like little quiet segues and things, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, that might have been a different one. I've seen something the saying that basically like music is getting um, not only is it melody that's dying, but other like music is kind of dumbed down.
Yeah,
Um,
I would agree.
and I guess if you like it, that doesn't mean you're dumb. It's just
Yeah.
it's just is what it is.
Well, we got to do what we can, Kirk.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's see. So anyway, what did I do? I'm trying to find a good way to record and like, caveat, we're total amateurs here, right? Right. So, I'm trying to find a good way to record my amp.
Mm.
So I got this mic. I think it's a Shure. It's actually, it's the same one you have right there,
Okay.
like an SM58.
That's right. Yeah,
And
that's a good one.
yeah, I think people record amps with these, and I'm trying to set the thing up, and I got the microphone plugged into my digital interface. I got it in front of the speaker on a mic stand, and but then the question becomes like, how loud to play the amp? You know, plus like the
Mm.
room I'm in, like there's just too much junk in here. Like there's a lot of junk, and then there's a drum set back here. So the drum set, like the snare and the speakers kind of vibrate a little bit if you have the amp really loud.
Right.
You know, so um, so I feel like I haven't gotten a satisfying sound from the amp. Maybe I gotta move the amp like into the closet or something weird,
I think that's a good idea.
you
Um,
know.
so I was recording in the space downtown, a practice space,
Mhm.
with my bandmate who had this little plexiglass curved wall, and he put it around my amp. So um, the microphone was inside the wall, but it was protecting, any bleed from other things. Basically, just creating a little compact room for the amp to be
Oh,
recorded
that's a
in.
great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's like a no-brainer for, all the recording engineers. Like they probably do this all day long. It's just like I'm not a recording engineer, you know. Like I'm just like sitting at home thinking like, how do I get a good sound out of this? You know, we talked about this earlier, like making demos for the pedals.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question becomes like, how do you record the pedal, right? And so, you got your choice, right? Like I can get the iPhone out and record with the speaker on the iPhone, but then you're definitely going to get room noise.
Mm-hmm.
And, are you recording the amp directly? Like, does that record well on the iPhone?
I also
Like,
think the iPhone, the signal gets blown out very easily.
yeah, yeah, right. So then the second one is I can record directly into GarageBand, but then like like using a guitar pedal through the audio interface, like, it's a little different than playing it into the amp, right? Because there's a digital conversion, and then the amps in GarageBand actually they do kind of react to the input, so you can kind of overdrive their Marshall simulator,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a little different, right? So then the next thing is we can mic the amp, plug the pedal into the amp, and then record from the amp into GarageBand, right? And so then like then you get into this audio recording stuff where you're like, and now I know why those guys get paid and they have these studios and all these people working there. You don't just go in and record. Like someone's got to set up all the equipment. They got to set the amp up. They got to put the little wall around it. They got to set up the mics. And people will have multiple mics. I've heard all these
Mm-hmm.
stories of recording in different ways. So anyway, I'm trying to simulate that here at home. It's try to get some results.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would definitely suggest trying out a few different techniques. I plan to do the same thing because I have my Vox AC10 here. I've also got my little modeling amp. Um, but I live in an apartment with neighbors, so
Oh yeah.
like the ideal thing is that you turn up a small amp as loud as possible. But I
Yeah.
don't want to
Yeah, my amp is like,
get any
I got this
complaints.
amp, I really like it. And it's about 36 watts. So it's like a Marshall 18, but it's got, instead of two EL84s, it's got four EL84s. And I thought like 36 watts, that's going to be better than 18 when I built it. I should have just built the 18 watt because at 36 watts, it's way louder than I need.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got two channels. One of them's like, it's kind of the low gain input and it just has a tone control, like single tone control, right? And then the other channel is the high gain channel, and it's got like a bass, treble, and mids control, right? And a volume. Um, so if I plug into the low gain channel, it sounds pretty good. Um, and the volume control, there's a range on it that you can use. You can turn it up really loud. It's kind of easier to adjust. When you plug into the high gain channel, the volume control is so touchy. Like it just goes from like really quiet to just like really loud, like
Hmm.
in a fraction of a turn. And it's a little frustrating. Like, do you ever find yourself like tapping the control just to get the
Yeah.
knob to turn a tiny bit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of frustrating. Um, but then again, maybe I should be playing it louder anyway, but then I have neighbors and stuff, I don't want to bug
Right.
the neighbors.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that curve flattens out a little bit towards the high end of the knob. Like it's real touchy at the low end probably, but then once you get it to like, where it's super loud, it probably has less of an effect when you turn it a little bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It gets pretty loud. Like like you could play with a loud drummer and, easily, right. Or even
Mm-hmm.
louder, you know what I mean? It's pretty loud. Um, but I don't even turn it up that loud in here because the room is pretty small and, it's
There's a
just
drum
me.
set there. Yeah.
Yeah, but then I'm like, how do I record this? If it's too quiet, like I'll hear like my foot on the ground, like if I kick a cable or something, or if I step on the switch, like I'll hear the click, unless the amp is loud enough, or I got to move back away. So anyway, I'm just kind of learning like as I go.
Yeah. I've got a couple of hollow body guitars and this the Epiphone Casino. It it's absolutely the best sounding guitar that I have. But if I want to record it, I have to turn up the amp pretty loud to, you know, even if just to play it with it, like the amp has to be pretty loud for me to not hear the acoustic sound of the guitar.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I play the electric guitar. I just play it unplugged in a lot. And I to be truthful, I actually the more I reflect on that, I think that that's a mistake because you get used to the dynamic of the guitar when it's not plugged in, and it's totally different when you have it plugged in,
Right.
you know, like the
No,
touch and the feel.
I'm with you on that. I really think, like the electric guitar is meant to be plugged in, um, and turned up. But it's a very, I don't know, it's kind of a transgressive thing. Playing the electric guitar is it's like being the ugly American. Like everybody's gonna hear you. And
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I guess it depends on where you live. Like if we were off in the suburbs and we had a detached house with some space, you could, you could set up in the garage. Maybe you got more room and, but here, like my house is like, I'm like right up against the neighbors on both sides. And then my family's upstairs, so I don't want to blow them out.
yeah, I mean, and it's hard to play electric guitar like inoffensively and
Yeah.
do it well. Like it's
Yeah.
it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
like balls out.
Yeah. I usually play pretty quiet, but if Karen goes out and Milo's playing video games with his headphones on, then I'm like, I have free reign in these moments.
Yeah.
Then I just turn it up. Nobody's complained yet, so I think it's okay. I did a little bit of that this afternoon. But yeah. So let's see, what else have we talked about? Or what else should we talk about? You got any questions?
Um,
How about
no, I'm trying to remember what we talked about before, but
how about goals for the week? What are we going to do this week? Productive.
well, I am definitely going to take advantage of some, Labor Day sales, and I have in my shopping cart, I was going to buy one of those cheapo, like factory buyout acoustic guitars from Guitar
Oh,
Fetish,
oh
and
yeah,
then
we talked about that.
I was going to get the kit to make it into an electric, acoustic electric, um, and then film a video about.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. It sounds like a pretty
Um,
good project.
because you actually have to saw like a square hole in the side of your guitar to
Ah,
do it. So like most people wouldn't do this with
hand tools.
with their nice guitar. This guy I play with, he just got like a brand new fancy resonator guitar, and he just finished electrifying it. And I'm really anxious to see it. I don't think it has like a big EQ box on the top. I think it's probably something where it's like the controls clip onto the front of the guitar, and like all of the stuff is fairly like non-invasive, but you had to drill holes in it to do it, and that's just
Yeah.
like if you were to make that guitar behind you into an electrified guitar,
Oh yeah,
you'd
this
have
one
to
over here.
drill a couple holes in it somewhere. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good project. I
That,
think
and
what
I was going to get some new tuners, replace the nut and the pickups on my Strat. This one right here. It's going to put the hot rails in it.
nice.
That ought to be enough.
Yeah, that sounds like a good set of projects for the week.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to just work on this podcast, and then I have some recordings I made. So I think I'm going to try and put those. I took some video footage of just the park and the ocean and the sunset. I think I'm going to just try and put some audio behind that.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking
Right?
forward to seeing the juxtaposition. Having
Yeah.
seen the video.
Yeah. I did I did a couple recordings of some drones that might be good for practicing, and then I did a couple recordings of um, just some like effects and some things, right? So maybe I'll put those up there, right? And I think it's more interesting than watching me play the guitar. Maybe it's also like focusing on listening.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if did we talk about the active listening?
Yeah, I think we did.
Did we record that?
Um, I don't think we did. I think we talked about that before you hit record.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because one of the things that I was listening. Well, let me say this over again. I was listening to a podcast. Maybe actually we did talk about this. Come to think of it,
okay.
I can't remember. We can edit that out. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. But anyway, it'd be good for active listening, right? And then I made a couple like weird drum kind of tracks with the synthesizer. Um, so maybe that's something I can do something with. I don't know. So maybe that's my goal for the week there.
That's a good goal.
Yeah. I got to clean off the desk. That's the other one.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Clean the
I have to
desk
do laundry.
and then get back. Oh yeah, yeah. And then get back to soldering, right? I gotta solder up that trem shifter.
Yes.
Yeah. So what should we say in closing?
Um, well, it would be cool if we knew what we were going to talk about next week, but I think, barring that, um, thank you for tuning into the podcast. We're going to bring you more great discussion of all things music, guitar, and electronic related subjects, and more.
Yeah. Post some comments.
Yeah, if we're on YouTube,
Questions. Yeah.
yeah, then definitely post some comments.
Yeah.
Like, what do people want to talk about? What do people want us to talk about? Um, I feel like this really is, this is our contribution to a community of music nerds, because this is nerding.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to talk about um, more effects. We've covered a couple today and a couple in the last one. Maybe we'll do more. We'll do some more demos.
Yeah. Well, I do think that we need to inject some demos, some audio demos
Yeah.
into
Yeah,
the
let's
video,
do that.
maybe either at the end or while we're talking about them. But like, since we talked about it, I want to actually do a little demo of this guy as well while I'm doing the Vulcan.
Yeah, that's actually exactly what I was thinking. I'm going to